Welcome everyone to Life Lessons from Movies, presented by my organization, the Zen of Hollywood, and me, your host, David MacKay. In this segment, we extract life lessons from films so that we can learn something, improve our lives, and become happier, which I believe we all desire. Okay, today's theme is managing our negative coping mechanisms. And we'll examine this theme through the good film called Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Christopher Walken, and Tom Hanks. Please know there are spoilers ahead. We all know about the physiological mechanism that we use to deal with external threats called fight or flight. Either we engage in conflict or we basically run away. Which of the two do you think we prefer in general? The latter of the two, of course. Yes, I don't care if it's a bear or a grumpy father-in-law. In general, we prefer to avoid conflict to manage the situation. Frank Abagnale Jr. in the film Catch Me If You Can would certainly agree. I mean, here's this guy who between the ages of 15 and 21 engaged in criminal activity, being a forger, con artist, and most notably an imposter. I mean, the way he pretended to be a pilot, doctor, and lawyer was in such a convincing fashion to get his needs met, to get what he wanted, was quite impressive. But it was also quite disturbing. And so we need to take a look at this story, this film based on a true story, to see how Frank got in this position. Frank's father, Frank Abagnale Sr., played by Christopher Walken, is a guy that we see in this film who's given to exaggerated gestures. He overly romanticizes his life. In fact, do you remember that one scene in which he tells his son how he won over his wife, Frank Jr.'s mother, who supposedly amidst over 200 other soldiers who were competing for this woman? I mean, this guy definitely liked to tell stories because he was focused on prestige and status. Frank Sr. wanted to feel important, and he wanted to live this extravagant lifestyle, and he was willing to go at great lengths to do so, including tax fraud, as it turns out, which really led to his downfall. Now, Frank Jr., who idolized his parents, especially his father, was just devastated. And he felt devastated, disillusioned, but instead of dealing with those negative emotions, he basically suppressed them. He used a negative coping mechanism through this fantasy life that he created to avoid feeling these emotions. And for a while it worked. Frank was on the run. He was living this high life. He was living the prestige and the high status that his father was after, and he was getting away with it for a while. But eventually it catches up with him, and he's caught by the FBI, and he's forced to face his negative emotions, which he does. In the end, Frank ends up helping the FBI, in fact, catch other criminals who were doing basically the same thing that he was. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, why didn't Frank and why don't we deal with our negative emotions instead of using these negative coping mechanisms? Well, these emotions are super painful. We don't want to face that reality. And in fact, all of us use negative coping mechanisms and inhabit these false personas in such a way that we're all, to a certain degree, in a certain sense, we're all imposters like Frank Jr. We all suppress our authenticity so that we can get our needs met and gain the approval of others. It's amazing that we can't be our true selves, but once we realize that other people feel so threatened by that, when we express our joy, our passion, our free-spirited innocence, then we can understand why that is. People feel threatened by this because they aren't that way, because they have different standards of what is right and good, and so they force us to suppress that authenticity so that we then project these false personas, gaining their approval. But we cannot be happy living inauthentic lives, of course. And so to get to that authenticity and therefore our happiness, just as Frank did, we have to face the emotional pain behind our negative coping mechanisms. The key to doing this is to really take a look at the false personas that we're projecting for the world and taking a look at those negative coping mechanisms, whatever those might be, whether it's suppression, repression, denial, projection, intellectualization, dissociation, whatever the case may be, we're using them to avoid our personal pain. We need to face that pain, and once we do and heal, we can become whole again, authentic and happy. So this is what I took as a major life lesson from this film, but I would love to hear from you in the comments below. What did you see as an important life lesson? And for more life lessons and movies, please go to my website, thezenofhollywood.com. That's thezenofhollywood.com. And please like my video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.